So we'll get started. My name is Lisa Cheney. I'm with the Canadian Mental Health Association, and I'm located in Charlotte County. And with me is Dawn Odell. I'll allow her to introduce herself in just a sec. And we are doing this webinar together for you today. As we continue on, there will be an opportunity for questions, but that will be at the end of the webinar. Our webinar is probably just under an hour. The last time we did it was about 40 minutes. So we will have time for questions following. As well, if you would be willing to fill out a survey, as soon as we leave this webinar, you will receive a survey. And if you'd be willing to fill that out at the end, we'd love it. Thanks very much. So again, I'm Lisa Cheney and Dawn Odell.
Good afternoon. I'm a program coordinator within the Greater St. John area. And today we are going to provide you some education on suicide awareness. We often think that helping someone who may be at risk of suicide quite often as an extraordinary event or act that requires professional credentials or expertise. However, most times it is a family member, a friend, a coworker, a peer, or sometimes even a complete stranger that provides that support. Today's education presentation will provide you with some tools to further your education on suicide awareness. So thank you for joining us. Canadian Mental Health Association was founded in 1918. As a nationwide charity, we help maintain and improve the mental health of all Canadians. And as a province-wide leader and champion for mental health, Canadian Mental Health Association helps people access the community resources they need to build resilience and support recovery from mental illness. So what does this mean? We provide education, information, and advocacy with regards to both mental health and mental illness. And last year, Canadian Mental Health Association served over 75,000 New Brunswickers. Within the province, we are known as Canadian Mental Health Association of New Brunswick. We have 18 locations provincially, offices in the Fredericton, Moncton, and St. John area. And we also have what is known as a Community Education Coordinator program that serves those rural communities of New Brunswick. We also have a provincial peer support program, which is vital to providing support to individuals experiencing mental health issues. We also have an employment program, Working Stronger Together, that supports individuals with mental health issues in not only developing lifelong employment skills, but also earning lifelong employment opportunities. We know this is vital to supporting individuals within our communities. It reduces hospitalization and promotes inclusion. When we talk about suicide awareness, it's very important that we dispel the myths of suicide, but also highlight the facts. Lisa, is it a fact or a myth that talking about suicide may give someone the idea that suicide or push them towards thoughts of suicide?
So we know this is a myth. If you think about any type of psychology, we want to encourage people to talk about issues. We want to encourage people not to bury things. So suicide is one of those big topics that we really encourage folks to talk about. So when we talk about it, it doesn't give someone the idea of it. They've already possibly had that idea. It gives them an opportunity to breathe and say, yes, I have been thinking about suicide. This has been a struggle for me, and finally someone asked me about it. So it's really helpful for us to not avoid the conversation, to be willing to talk about it. So that is a myth.
Myth or fact? People who talk about suicide should not be taken seriously.
Again, another myth. We definitely want to take it seriously whenever someone talks about suicide. We do know that people often will talk about suicide before they do suicide. So yeah, it should every time be taken seriously.
Myth or fact? People who talk about or attempt suicide are just looking for attention.
So we would say, give them that attention. There's more to this story. Someone didn't just decide one day, oh, I think I'll suicide. There's a lot underneath. If you think about an iceberg, there's 10% above the water and 90% below. So what is that attention that is needed to look at that 90% below that iceberg? What are they dealing with? What has brought them to this place? So yeah, they require our attention. It's not attention seeking, it's they need some help in dealing with these challenges. So that's a myth.
Myth or fact? When someone has attempted suicide, they will not try again.
Again, that's another myth. We do know from stats that someone who has attempted suicide is at a higher risk of attempting again. So that's a myth.
Myth or fact? A person who is suicidal clearly wants to die.
We have lots of myths today. This is another myth. As there may be a small percentage that would clearly want to die, the large percentage wants to live. They just want the pain to stop. This 90% of what's underneath the iceberg, that's been a challenge, that's been struggling, whatever those things have been, that's the reason they want this pain to stop. So it's not a desire to die, it's a desire for the pain to stop.
Someone who is smart and successful would never die by suicide. Lisa, is this a myth or a fact?
Again, another myth. We know Robin Williams, we know Kate Spade. There's many people that are successful, well-educated, many, famous that have, or not famous, that have died by suicide.
Myth or fact? Suicide generally happens without warning signs.
Again, it's a myth. We're going to get into that a little further in this webinar. We'll teach you more about warning signs, but it's a myth. There is almost always, again, I'm saying almost always, not always, but almost always warning signs.
Lisa, is it a myth or a fact that suicide rates are highest at Christmas time?
This is a myth, but it's commonly heard. People assume that suicide rates are higher at Christmas time, but in actuality, they're lower at Christmas time.
And finally, myth or fact, males have the highest rate of suicide in North America.
Here's our fact of the day. Yes, men have a higher rate of suicide than women. Women attempt suicide more, but 80% of those suicides in North America are male. So if you think about suicide in Canada, there's just some stats here for you. There were 4,157 deaths by suicide in Canada in 2017. Over 3,000 of those were male and a little over 1,000 of those were female. And if you look at the snapshot in the second stat in 2014-15, suicide ranked as the third cause of avoidable deaths in New Brunswick. In New Brunswick, we have average, give or take, around 100 suicides a year. Some years more, some years less, but usually somewhere around that 100 range. And the third stat here is suicide accounts for 24% of all deaths among our 15 to 24-year-olds. So these are some significant stats, and important for us to have this training, to have this awareness. How can we help people? How can we support them? So that's why we're here today, to help with that. What does suicide mean? It's to end your life on purpose. Again, as I stated before, it's not to die, it's to end the pain. So suicide is someone choosing to end their life on purpose.
Who is at risk of suicide? Suicide is a very complicated issue. People who die by suicide or attempt suicide quite often feel overwhelmed, hopeless, helpless, desperate, and alone. People who suffer or who have suffered from abuse, neglect, or who are socially isolated are at risk of suicide, along with people who have been or are in trouble with the law. Also, individuals who are struggling with their sexual identity, people who have a serious mental or physical illness. So this includes individuals that might be experiencing depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, etc., but also individuals that are experiencing physical illness, cancer, diabetes, chronic pain, because they are feeling that struggle and don't want to endure that pain, nor have their family members endure that pain. People who have attempted suicide in the past or know someone who has. People who have experienced a recent loss or a major life change, divorce, a death of a loved one, job loss, etc. And individuals who have or are experiencing gambling or substance-related addiction issues. Anyone can be at risk of suicide. When we talk about suicide, it's important to address how to help individuals. By providing support and connection to someone who may be at risk of suicide is not fixing everything. It's not making everything okay for them today. It's not providing counseling. That is the role of professionals. However, helping and supporting individuals who might be at risk of suicide is providing support, is providing caring, is providing connections to those professionals for the help the individual needs. But it also means calling in emergency resources when necessary. So that could be addictions and mental health services, it could be 911, and it could be mobile mental health. And we'll get into all those resources throughout this presentation.
So we're going to get into the section of the webinar of how to help. And an easy way to remember how to help is the acronym SELL. So we're going to spot signs and symptoms. We're going to have a look at that in a moment. We're going to explore those signs and symptoms. We're going to listen to hear, not to respond, and we're going to help link them to the resources they need. So we'll unfold that a little bit as we continue on. And then there's warning signs. So as we look at those signs and symptoms, generally looking at overall warning signs, could be someone's behaviors changing. They have, maybe life circumstances have just changed, like Dawn had mentioned before. Maybe there's a death in the family, friendship, or a divorce, or a financial loss. It could be any type of life circumstance. And when we think about life circumstance, we try to make sure we pay attention to what that is like for that person, not what feelings we might put to it. I use the example of a cat. So yes, I love my cat, but if something happened to my cat, I wouldn't turn to suicide. I would struggle, I'd be sad, and I would grieve the cat, but that wouldn't lead me to suicide. Whereas depending on someone's situation, that life circumstance, it might be that, might be just that. The cat was the last thing that they could tolerate the loss of, and that's what moves them to suicide. So in life circumstances or behaviors or any of those things, it's good for us to look at to really listen to what that person's feelings are about that loss, not what we might want to put on that. And then physical changes. What if someone who's often, clean cut and spiffy dresser kind of thing, and now they're not, like they've changed, there's something different. They're not so concerned about their appearance. There's something that's off a little bit, as well as feelings and thoughts. You recognize that they're not talking the same way they have before. They're not expressing themselves in the same way, their thoughts and their feelings, and verbally saying things like, oh, it doesn't matter anyway, or nobody cares, or what difference does it make? That kind of hopeless conversation. So these are kind of a general warning signs, and Dawn will give us a little more in-depth look at warning signs.
So in spotting the signs and symptoms, when individuals are thinking about suicide, it could include everything from actions and behaviors. So has the individual had previous attempts of suicide? Are they becoming withdrawn from activities or events that maybe once they were involved in? Are they becoming socially isolated? Is the individual taking risk-taking behaviors, using drugs, alcohol, substance use, or misuse? Are they discussing the topic of suicide? Are they giving away valuable or meaningful possessions? Maybe it is that cat. Maybe it is a family heirloom, a brooch that they are looking to give away. And as Lisa touched on, that decrease in personal care. The verbal signs and symptoms could include everything from discussing the subject of death, expressions of hopelessness, helplessness, guilt, or worry, verbalizing that they're giving up. Nothing will work out anyways. I don't need these things anymore. I can't do anything right. There's no point in trying, or everyone is better off without me. Versus the feelings. So signs and symptoms that people might experience in terms of feelings include sadness, hopelessness, helplessness, desperation, worthlessness, loneliness, isolation, guilt, anger, or frustration that typically they wouldn't have experienced in the past, distressed, worried, sudden boost in mood. And that could be confusing for people because when it comes to suicide and an individual has determined their plan to die by suicide, they have that sense of relief. So their mood is then elevated because they have a plan and they're at peace with that plan. And finally, when it comes to feelings, maybe that intensity of intrusive thoughts and obsessive thoughts about suicide. Touching on life experience and circumstances. Has the individual been exposed to or survived abuse? Have they experienced losses such as self-esteem, relationship, a family member or friend? Is their health deteriorating, or are they being diagnosed with an illness? Are there financial losses or loss of work?
So how we can remember these warning signs is path warm? If you have a look there at the slide, you'll see on the side is path warm, and each one stands for something that'll help us remember what warning signs are. Obviously, when we're in a situation, when we're chatting with someone and they are struggling with thoughts of suicide, our stress levels go up. So it's hard to remember. But is path warm? Maybe that'll trigger and help you remember some of those things. So ideation, suicide ideation, are they thinking about suicide? Substance use, are they having problems with drugs and alcohol? Purposelessness, feeling there is no purpose in life or reason for living. Anxiety, are they feeling intense anxiety, overwhelmed and unable to cope? Or trapped, got no way out of this situation. In their mind, this is the only way out, the only way to stop their pain. Hope or helplessness, so they think that things will never get better. There is no hope. Withdrawal, maybe they're avoiding family, friends, or activities, things they've done in the past, they've just stopped doing. And anger. Anger's a tough one because when we're helping someone and supporting them and we're being reacted, we're receiving anger from them, it's hard for us to take off that personal jacket, you know, like it's not personal about you or me. That's a symptom of these thoughts of suicide and what they've been struggling with. If you think about a cold, you get a runny nose, a cough, sneeze, fever, those kinds of things. Those are symptoms of a cold. Well, we also have symptoms of suicide, and anger is one of those symptoms. So trying to recognize it as just that, it's a symptom, not anything personal towards you. And then recklessness. So someone is engaging in risky or harmful activities, and this isn't the person that you've known. They haven't done things like that. And now for this last little while, they've been doing things out of their character that are very risky. So that's also a sign of suicide as well. And then the mood change, a significant change in mood. If you could slip the slide, Dawn. So when we're looking at these things, like those were the warning signs, how do we explore it now? It's like, okay, I have an idea of the things that could show me that someone is thinking about suicide. How do I explore that? We take a deep breath and we relax and we ask questions. We want to explore that 90% of that iceberg, right? We want to look at how did they get here to this spot today of thinking about suicide. So we're asking questions. This is what I've noticed. I've noticed that you've been withdrawn from things you normally enjoy, and your conversations that you have sound rather helpless. And you used to be someone who took a lot of pride in their appearance, and that seems to have changed. I'm just wondering, how are things? Are you doing okay? What's happening? And allow them to talk, right? Allow them to have the floor. It's their chance to share what's going on in their heart and in their minds. And our job is to not be afraid of the question suicide. As you see on the slide, it said, make our questions clear, and we want to be direct. And if we think that person, as we're listening, as we're exploring those symptoms, if we think that person is thinking about suicide and is at risk of suicide, we need to directly ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? It's not a question we want to shy away from. Again, as I said in the beginning of the webinar, it's something that gives them a little bit of breathing room. Wow, someone can hear me. They can hear that my struggle is so deep and that they'll listen to me. They're actually willing to talk about suicide. They're not afraid of it. So it's so important for us to be direct and don't be afraid to ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? We don't say, are you thinking about harming yourself? Or are you thinking about hurting yourself? That's what we don't say, because that's not direct. That's us uncomfortable skirting around the issue. We want to be direct with caring and kindness. Are you thinking about suicide? So we're exploring, yes, but we're also not shying away from asking the question. Thanks, Dawn.
When we ask questions, it's crucial to be prepared to listen. Listen to understand versus listening to judge. It's important to be aware of the verbal cues. Minimizing the individual's situation. Oh, come on, things aren't that bad. Or it sounds as though you're a bit worried. Versus cheerleading. I'm sure you're a strong person and you'll get through this. Being judgmental. It really isn't helpful to be so upset or angry. Giving advice. I think you should do this. Or promising that things will be okay. Or problem solving for the individual. They have to be part of the solution as well. When it comes to listening to your individual that might be at risk of suicide, the important thing is they want their feelings to be heard. And this reduces the intensity of the emotions and the distress that they are experiencing. So after we listen, we link. We link the person to further help. Help can come in many forms. So it can involve making connections for them to community resources, such as Canadian Mental Health Association, support networks. And it's important to call in those emergency services where necessary. If you believe that the individual is at risk, do not leave them alone. And if you are unsure of what to do, get the help. You are not to necessarily feel like you are to have all those solutions for the individual. You are their support, and support can come in many forms, and it's about reaching out. Link the person to further help. This can include responding honestly. Let them know you are there and that you care for them. If you're unsure of what to do, get help. Call on a trusted friend. Maybe you have a support person that works as part of addictions or mental health, or that works in a community agency that can be a support as well. When in crisis, it can be difficult to solve problems. Having a crisis action plan in advance can help those who you already know might be at risk. So one of the things that we encourage people to do is to create a crisis action plan during their periods of wellness. And this can very easily be kept on an individual, but it highlights who their connections are, who their support people are, so that when an individual is in crisis, we know who to approach, who to ask for help, who is their support.
So when we help people with thoughts of suicide, it can definitely be a struggle. We find it challenging. Like Dawn said earlier, sometimes we think that the person has to be a professional in order to help. But we everyday folks can help and support. But there's some things that get in the way. So we do have a couple of questions to ponder just to bring awareness to our own situations as things that might hold us back. So the first question to ponder is, what keeps us or me from responding to someone's personal pain or who might be struggling? What would keep me from responding? So I know that Dawn has a few ideas. I'm sure you guys have a few of your own, but just let that question roll around in your mind. What would keep you from responding to someone's personal pain or struggle?
So it might be a fear of not knowing how to support, or not necessarily having the necessary tools to support the individual who is struggling. There might be a fear of bringing on more harm to the current situation. You may be struggling yourself with your overall wellness, or it might also be in respect to the time or effort needed to support an individual in crisis.
So those are a few examples of things that might keep us from responding. So again, it's not to say, oh no, you're a bad person for not responding. It's recognizing that there are lots of things that hold us back sometimes. And depending on the situation, depending on the person, there's lots of things to look at. But we just want us to be aware of those things that might hinder us from responding, and maybe we can push through those. And our next question is, what are common things we do to avoid responding to someone's personal pain? What are those things that we might actually do to avoid it? Dawn?
So common things might include minimizing their concerns. Tomorrow will be a better day. Individuals might turn the focus towards themselves. Oh, well, this is the pain that I'm experiencing. Versus avoidance, avoiding encountering the individual because maybe past history has shown that they are struggling, and turning back to the thing I said earlier about struggling yourself. You might not want that added pressure on yourself. And in saying these, my points are not to downplay the topic of suicide. It's just common thoughts or ideas that may prevail with individuals as well.
Thanks, Dawn. So yeah, those are just a few examples. I mean, there's countless more out there. It's just to bring awareness to each one of us of what may hinder us from supporting and helping someone else. And recognizing that, we're allowed to say, if someone is really struggling with their own mental health, they may definitely have to use that link, link them to someone else. I'd love to help you. I'm so sorry you're struggling, but I too am struggling. So I have to encourage you to call the helpline or to connect with someone else. So it's okay if we're not able to, but just recognizing those areas that we may struggle in and possibly push past those. But if you yourself are having thoughts of suicide, you see the slide, there's a list of things. What works for you? What would speak to you in this time? So if you yourself are having thoughts, call that crisis line or support line. There's CHIMO in New Brunswick that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there's also Kids Help Phone. Those numbers you can find online, or you can also check with CMHA&B. They are available, like I say, 24/7, and you can call them as many times as you need to. It's those middle of the night times that are hard and people don't know where to turn. There's a place you can call. You can call those lines. And of course, your friends, family, support, draw on support. One of the signs and symptoms was that we isolate. If you're having struggling thoughts, if you're, the suicide thoughts are pretty obsessive in your mind, you need to reach out. Don't isolate. Reach out and speak to family, friends, or trusted people. Talk to your family doctor. We encourage people to talk to their family doctor because it could be a medical issue. Maybe it's a medication that you're taking, or maybe it's an actual medical issue, so they can help get to the bottom of this. And they can also refer you to other services that might be necessary. You don't need a referral from a doctor to go to Addictions and Mental Health, the formal counseling service from the government here in New Brunswick. And you can also use your own EAP programs or private counseling. You don't need referrals for those. Those you can just contact on your own. You can set up frequent appointments. If you are really struggling, set up frequent appointments. Don't think, oh, I'll wait 1 month or 2 months, or, try to get those appointments in quickly. And if you're not able to see that counselor regularly, who else can you find to support you in the meantime? And then talk every day to at least one person you trust about how you're feeling. So important to get those feelings out. So important to get those words out. It's like taking the lid off a pot. A boiling pot, it's going to bubble over. So it's so important to get that lid off, to let off a little steam, to let some things out. Think about seeking help from the emergency department. If you are really struggling and your thoughts are very obsessive, then it's probably a good idea to go to the hospital to get that help. Talk to someone who has been there. If you don't know anyone personally who has been there with thoughts of suicide and has tools and coping mechanisms that have gotten them through that, then I'm sure there's many online. I think of Kevin Hines, for example. He's one individual that has attempted suicide and survived. That's an individual, and I'm sure there's many more. And then don't make any big decisions. It's not but going to the grocery store hungry is not a good idea, because you're going to make choices that you normally wouldn't make, the ice cream or whatever it might be. Don't make any choices or any decisions when you're really struggling. That's not the time. Try to reach out and get the help that you need. So those are some thoughts for you. And in a high-risk situation, if you are the person supporting someone who is in a high-risk situation, so you've asked them, are you thinking about suicide? And they have said yes. Your next question is, have you attempted suicide in the past? You want to know if there's a history of suicide attempts. So that puts them at a higher risk. You want to ask if they have a means. Do they know how they plan to suicide? What type, what's their means? And then the third is when. Do they know when? if all of these things, if they have attempted suicide before, if they do have a means and they do have a time, then this is a high risk. So we put some things into place for that. So we don't leave the person alone. We get immediate support from the parents, friends, family, police, hospital, emergency. And we reduce or remove the access to those means. Whatever those means were that that person spoke of, we remove that means or reduce access to. And then we also be aware we never put ourselves at risk. We want to keep ourselves safe as well. So assessing the situation, if it's, if you're not safe, then it's immediate 911 call. So those are things you can do.
When it comes to mental health emergency services, there's a variety of resources available throughout the province. We can call 911 in emergency. There is also the local mental health professionals within every community, peer support consultants, mobile mental health crisis unit services as part of addictions and mental health services. There is a local mental health and addiction centers, the CHIMO helpline, 1-800-667-5005, Kids Help Phone, 1-800-668-6868. Obviously, family and friends are vital supports to individuals experiencing mental health crisis, and our local hospitals. I also want to add here that if you do have a health plan as part of your work, your employment, you might have access to an employee and family assistance program, which is a vital service for individuals as well. But obviously, adding to this list includes counselors, peers, mentors, spiritual leaders. All those resources are vital for individuals. So this, in essence, is our presentation for this afternoon. Both Lisa's contact information and mine is on the slide. And now we are going to open up for any questions that might have arisen throughout the presentation.
We'll just give it a minute to wait for if there are any questions. But again, just a reminder that you'll see in the chat line, there is our website, our Facebook page, and our YouTube address. So if you are interested in any more of the webinars or things that we offer at CMHA, you can check that out. And you will have a survey. As soon as we end this, as soon as we leave, you will receive a survey, and if you'd be willing to fill that out, that would be wonderful. So I don't see any questions coming through. I hope we have been helpful to you all today, and we wish you a lovely afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.